We're already up over 50 folks. I know we'll still have a few more join, but thank you all. Welcome to our third call of 2025. I can't believe we are at the end of September. This year is going by so super fast. We are going to get started with a few training announcements, and then I'm going to turn it over to Steve for a few more things that are good to have you in the know on, and then we will turn it over to our FDA partners to hear their thoughts on Conference for Food Protection, which is, of course, why you're all really here. But we're going to take advantage of our time together to share a few things of interest. First off, it's survey season. And when I say survey season, we have a few surveys coming your way. First off, we've got the resource survey. This is one that's done typically every 5 years. And it's done in a written format, but it covers all of the major food program areas. So those will be coming to an inbox near you fairly soon. We've got the one that I've been bugging you all about, which is our state retail food program survey. This one's done every 2 years. I know it seems like we just talked yesterday, but it's been over 2 years and I need that time on your calendars. This is a survey style interview, but we're going to talk specifically about retail things. And just in case you're wondering, we did make sure to align surveys so we aren't asking you any duplicate information on any of these surveys that are coming to you. And then last but not least, we have a new one. And this one is an online survey about the One Integrated Workforce Survey. We really need your feedback. This is in tandem with Partnership for Food Protection, and that survey has been emailed out. So we are looking for your information and support on gathering current data for all of these topics. We have the QR code at the bottom of the screen, which is the introduction to that resource survey if you are seeking more information. And if you have any questions, again, just email us here at Apto.
I'm just going to mention on the One Integrated Workforce Survey, all of our colleague Joe Graham would be very, very appreciative if you all, he is leading that particular project, if you all do participate in it. And we're really looking forward to getting that data over to the Partnership for Food Protection's One Integrated Workforce group. Definitely, when I talk to all of you, recruiting and retention is a common challenge in the current environment, and that's really what they're seeking to address. So if you haven't completed that survey, please do. That will be open until a week from or next Monday, and then that will close. So and it's probably about a 10 or 12 minute survey, so it's not particularly long. So sorry, I just wanted to do a bit of encouragement on that one.
No, it is perfectly fine. And I also meant to say thank you for all the states that have already set time aside on their calendars to talk to me on that resource survey. We are approaching, we're over a third done. So the times, if you want to get a time convenient for you, are starting to get more limited. So fill out that when is good survey so we can get our chat scheduled. All right. Next up, if you are anywhere in the Southwest region and you have staff that you would like to put in an environmental sampling course to help with that outbreak investigation component and also boost up your standard 5 procedures, we have this face-to-face hands-on workshop, and we have 2 coming up in Texas the first week of November, one in the San Antonio area and one in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We would love to see you there if you can make that trek over and get some extra training for your staff in environmental sampling. Okay, we also have more training coming up. We told you we're going to give you all the announcements, but here you go. We have our training page linked here on the QR code, but you can find out more about the instructor skills training, about basic investigations and inspections. Really great class if you have a brand new hire that has never been in the inspection realm before. Highly recommended. We have root cause analysis coming up in February. There's also produce safety, seafood HACCP, and then other on-demand training and webinars. So check out our training page for some of that information. And we also want to highlight some of the FDA trainings that are coming up and available at no cost to your staff. We have FD 215, Managing Retail Food Safety. These all will be virtual courses available to all retail staff. And we also have FD 218, the risk-based inspection methods in retail. You will see in these dates, we also have 2 train the trainer courses coming up. And those being the same week, it's actually same week. It's a combination course where you can send staff to learn how to teach both classes in one. So great opportunities there. We have seats remaining in these classes. So check out the QR code. It will get you funneled to the right website to get signed up. And if you have staff that you want to put in that risk-based inspections class, this way you have plenty of notice to go ahead and start tackling those prerequisites to make sure we can get your staff the training they need and get those classes filled. And everyone loves Inspector Boot Camp, so we have some save the dates for you. These are happening again in January as we're sticking to our schedule. We have beginning level Inspector Boot Camp January 14th, 21st, and 28th. And then an advanced Inspector Boot Camp the 15th, 22nd, and 29th. So make sure you mark your calendars, scan the QR code, or visit the AFDA website for more information. We have some new topics this year. We're going to be talking about report writing, conflict de-escalation, preventative controls, having food safety plans, food safety culture, even do a short root cause analysis session. Tons of information for your staff there. So we hope you can get registered and see you there. All right, and I think this is my last slide, Steve, before I pop it over to you. But we just wanted to make you aware that AFDO also has some industry training courses. So if you have industry stakeholders that you are, working great with, and they ask, do you have training or know where we can get some more training? We have an active managerial control course for industry that we will take to an industry host. And we also have implementing risk-based inspections and auditing for retail establishments available to industry. These are both in-person courses at this time, but more information can be found on the AFDA website to help share that information with our industry partners, because that knowledge is power and we want them to know the same things we're looking for. All right. And with that, Steve.
Absolutely. I just want to note there's going to be one other course that's coming online in the winter. I think February is going to be the first official offering. For some of you probably have been through it. Some of you probably haven't had the opportunity, but a very common course that has just been very popular with the inspection community. That is essentially a private sector course, Crucial Conversations, which is really a communications course that talks about dealing with those difficult conversations, imagine in the field or amongst your staff, or when you're a leader with your staff, as the case may be. Like I said, in February, it's a national curriculum. When we discussed this with the AFTA board, about a third of them had taken the course previously and really valued it, but it's not universally available across state and local environments. So a great communications course that I just wanted to mention is going to be coming online in February, and you'll see more about it shortly. Okay, with that, I am always required to do my advertisement for the educational conference coming up June 5th through the 9th. The agenda is coming together nicely. We're beginning to see the general session solidify. Then we'll be working through the tracks. But one note is the date pattern is slightly different this year. We're one day earlier. In other words, the first general session will be on Saturday, and the general sessions will be Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Excuse me. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday versus Sunday through Wednesday, and then workshops and other conference activities before. So just heads up, that is coming up. And Columbus, for those of you that haven't been there, is an amazing city and is one of the most popular places that we do events. We just hear really great things from participants. They really enjoy Columbus. So definitely get that on your calendar and make sure that's in your budget plan for the year. Moving on. Just want to note we're in Fresh Take Friday fall season. We've got several webinars coming up, including Food Fraud Oral Culture Learner Program, which is a program out of Boulder, Colorado, and some work they've done there really to move toward a much more graphical type program in teaching their establishments, particularly those that have that may not have English speaking skills as their primary language. Hand hygiene myths coming as we move into.
Steve, I think your audio has froze up. Am I the only one?
No, he froze for me too, Deanna.
Okay,
Okay, am I
I think you're
back?
back.
Okay. We'll start back on Fresh Take Fridays. Just a great series coming up as we go into the season. Please definitely take advantage of these. We got some great speakers coming up. I will also tell you that I've seen the draft spring schedule. It is pretty amazing, and we've got some great speakers coming up on that schedule also. So definitely take advantage of these as we go forward. And I would just highlight oral culture learner is and the hand hygiene myths are very retail centric. Both of them. One highlighting some work done in one of our local programs and another really focusing on some of the kind of in that right neurovirus period on some of the things we can learn about hand hygiene. Okay, moving on. Program manager work series. Many of you have been through the new program manager training. If you have anyone that's coming new into leadership roles in your program and looking to do that, there are 3 4-hour virtual webinars with some homework in between, along with 1 8-hour in-person instruction on June 5th in Columbus. Definitely something that has been very highly rated by those that have participated. But if you have someone that you'd like to get in that, follow the QR code and get them registered. This does typically fill quickly. So definitely get your folks in if you have anyone that you are interested in starting through that process. Some of the topics are just noted there on the side. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Um, Credential series we've talked about. I'm going to skip that, knowing we want to get to our speakers here shortly. And just one note, the additional freebie exercises have been published. Freebie-like exercises, I should say, have been published. Those are out there. You can follow the QR code and get to both of the 2 new exercises. There are now 3 of these developed in this new series, all of which are retail-centric. Let's go to the next one. Of course, we are doing retail HACCP plan reviews for essentially on for a fee basis system, graduated based on the size of establishment. We just actually submitted a very large one for a national, let's just say a national discount chain related to perhaps sushi rice and sushi that just got completed. We had really positive feedback from both the jurisdictions that participated in that process and also from the company that participated. So that is available. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Deanna, and we'll get you in contact with the right people. And lastly, the legislative tracking. We're getting close to the legislative session. We do track, and we do have previous year's legislative bills sitting out there. So please take advantage of that. And if you have some new things getting proposed and you're like, I don't know what to think about this, I'll give you a hint. There aren't very many new legislative ideas. It's probably been proposed somewhere else. And, go take a look and see if it has been done elsewhere. And also, don't hesitate to contact the programs that have seen those bills before to say, hey, what should I know about this going forward? Legislators tend to borrow from each other very heavily, so you don't often see new bills. Along with that, we will also be coming out in another week or so with a policy series aimed at program leaders in retail and manufactured foods, really talking, kind of doing some legislative prep. What have we been seeing in the legislative sessions? How do we make bills a win-win situation, or as I like to say, make a bad bill better? Talking a little bit about the MAHA movement and how that impacts food safety programs and what that might look like in state legislation. And then also I'm working with legislators and working with our stakeholders to help them advance our legislative proposals. Those, I believe, are going to end up in November and December on Monday afternoons. Monday afternoons Eastern time, late morning if you're out on the islands or in Alaska. But those are coming forward here shortly. I will note Those are going to be only available to active participants. There will be no recording, and invitations are going to be limited to those that are in a management role. We want that to be an open, free-flowing discussion, and to do that, we're going to make that a pretty closed-door meeting. And I think that ends.
Yes.
One more thing I just wanted to mention. During the survey that we did with all of you in March and April, trying to learn more about what you found valuable of the work that we were doing, I will note that the retail community very strongly found this sort of activity that we're doing to be of great value. And we could clearly see that in the retail community as we looked at survey results from all of you, that you were valuing these sort of relationship opportunities where you could get together and talk with your colleagues and learn from your colleagues. So we really appreciate that. And for those of you that are in some of the other programs, opportunities expand even more in some of those program areas. So want to thank you for that, and note that we heard you, and we're definitely proceeding to enhance those opportunities to put in some similar things in some of the other programs. So thank you for that response. With that, back over to you, Deanna.
All right. Thank you, Steve, for helping with all of our announcements and updates. And with that, the reason you're here to hear from our FDA partners, and I'm going to turn it over to Chris Smith to start us off.
Thank you, Deanna. And good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are, to all of you. It is so great to be with you today and to see so many familiar names on the list. It's great to be with you. I am Chris Smith, and I am currently serving as the acting director for the Division of Retail Food Protection Policy, Research, and Risk Assessment within our Office of Retail Food Protection. The division I lead here has the policy subject matter experts who are responsible for representing our agency at the Conference for Food Protection, developing the formal response, which we'll be discussing today, and writing the food code. Glenda Lewis, who many of you know, is the permanent director of this division. She is currently on special assignment developing a time temperature control for safety, or TCS, food strategy. This is an extremely important initiative. Discussed through the many issues at the last Conference for Food Protection, and we're fortunate to have a top expert like Glenda working on that for us. We will be discussing that initiative in more detail during this presentation. Our division also works in partnership with our Division of Retail Food Protection Implementation, which has the team of retail food specialists who you work with on a regular basis. My counterpart, Andre Pierce, who is the division director for implementation, is here with us today. We are so excited to be with you to talk about this important topic of the FDA response letter to CFP. We released this letter in early July, and we are doing everything we can to get the information out to our stakeholders as we move towards the 2026 version of the FDA Food Code. Our goal is to release that code in the summer of 2026, and our team has been working very hard towards that. We are always thankful for the partnership and collaboration that we're able to achieve through the Conference for Food Protection process and through forums such as this one. The state, local, tribal, and territorial regulatory agencies are our most important stakeholders, and we want to ensure that we are communicating out the information you need and answering your questions. We greatly appreciate Steve and Deanna and everyone on the AFDO team for providing forums like this to help us do that. Now let me introduce our presenters. From our policy team, we have Mary Cartagena, Jessica Otto, and Becky Vogt. And from our implementation team, we have Carolyn White, who will be presenting today. So without further ado, I will turn this over to our policy branch director, Mary, to start off the presentation.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to go to the next slide, Becky. So on this slide, you'll see a QR code on the right top side. And if you put your phone to it, it will lead you directly to the CFP website for the 2025 biennial meeting and take you directly to the FDA response letter. And so you'll see it throughout this presentation. So if you take that picture, you'll be able to go directly to the letter from the CFP website. But we also put the CFP website here in case you want to access it in that way. And then lastly for this slide, the focus of this presentation is to give you further details on FDA's concur and partially concur portion of the FDA response letter. Next slide. So the food code is FDA's best advice for a uniform system of provisions that address the safety and protection of food offered and food service. And as a model code, it is offered at all levels of the government that have delegated compliance responsibilities for retail food and food service operations. Full editions are published every 4 years, with a supplement being published every 2 years. Through participation in the biennial meetings of CFP, it brings together stakeholders such as scientists, industry, academia, consumers, and policymakers from all levels of government to actively participate in the process of introducing and debating proposed changes to the FDA food code. And proposals that are viewed favorably are forwarded to the FDA for consideration. In our office, the Office of Retail Food Protection, as Chris had mentioned, we are responsible for the development and revision of the FDA food code. And as such, we are responsible for evaluating those proposals to change the food code and for ensuring the integrity and scientific basis of the document. Our team uses a policy analysis framework and risk management process as a guide to evaluate the proposed changes to the food code and support informed decision making. This slide that you're seeing actually depicts a continuous cycle of phases that we have in policymaking at the retail level, with the CFP being one of the first parts of that cycle. Is the primary forum for presenting and debating the proposed changes to the food code. And typically, there's over 100 proposed issues proposing changes to the food or the retail program standards, and they're sent to CFP every 2 years. With that primary objective to persuade the conference and ultimately the FDA to accept those proposed changes and incorporate it into the food code. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can you just turn off your video because your audio is kind of doing some weird situations, and I'm going to see if that fixes it. Thank you.
Is it better now? Is it better?
It was better, and then it would get worse. So we're going to see. Hopefully, this just
okay. We're still. I'm still on the slide. So we're currently in the blue circle portion of this phase. So it's post CFP time. And it's in this phase that we respond to the CFP recommendation letter with an FDA response letter. The FDA response letter is where we communicate our evaluation of the policy recommendations and determine what we concur and non-concur. For CFP, once the conference is completed, CFP has 45 days to send recommendations to the FDA. And then the FDA has 60 days to respond to that recommendation letter. And the letter, if you see, it is composed of 2 parts. Part 1 are all the recommendations by the Assembly of Delegates to change parts of the food code or its annexes. Part 2 of the letter includes recommendations that request the FDA to take certain actions, but they don't necessarily recommend specific changes to the food code. So as Chris had stated, we sent our formal response back in July, and the team has been working to address and develop the 2026 version of the food code. For this particular presentation, we're going to go over the issues, but we're not necessarily going to be sharing final language at this point because it's still a work in progress. But we wanted to make sure that you're all aware of what is expected to come in the next edition of the food code. Next slide, please. So the 2025 biennial meeting was very productive, with the 3 councils deliberating on a total of 114 issues. The CFP identified 41 recommendations by the Assembly of Delegates to change the food code or the annexes. FDA concurred with 20 recommendations and partially concurred with 6 recommendations. For 15 of the recommendations, FDA non-concurred with 6 and indicated that we needed more time to consider 9 recommendations before deciding whether a food code modification is warranted. Part 2 of the letter identified 7 recommendations that request the FDA to take certain actions, but don't recommend a specific change to the food code. And in particular to Part 2 of the letter, the FDA will consider the availability of agency resources to pursue the recommended actions and will keep CFP Executive Board and the conference apprised of the progress made between now and the next biennial meeting. And just as a note, in the letter, you may find the phrase such as conceptually agree and partially concur. Conceptually agree means that FDA agrees in concept with the intent, but may not agree with the specific proposed wording or placement for the food code change. And in those cases, the FDA may choose to modify that recommended text, either to provide clarity or achieve consistency with the structure or conventions of the food code, including cross-references. And partially concur means that the FDA agrees conceptually with parts of the recommendations, but not with the full recommendations as described in the response letter. Next slide. This slide lists out issues that FDA non-concurred with. And so we had 6 non-concur issues in Part 1 and 3 non-concur issues in Part 2. And if you want further detailed explanation of each of these particular issues and FDA's response, please refer to the letter. And as I had indicated earlier, you could access it through the QR code. But due to time constraints on this call, we really wanted to focus on items that we will be moving forward with over the next biennium, because we know that a lot of you are working towards food code adoption of the most current code. And we appreciate the thoughtful work behind submitting the 9 issues referenced in this slide, which is why the response letter covers in detail the reasoning of our decision to not advance forward for policy implementation at this time. So I'm going to now turn the presentation over to Jessica.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary. I hope my audio holds out. So if it does not, please let me know. I will be happy to toggle my camera off. We're going to start with the issues that came through Council 1. And again, we're going to cover the concur and partially concur issue recommendations from that council. So the first one we're going to discuss is issue 2025. We're actually going to combine issues 1 and 2. These in particular, we're asking to amend the food code definitions for commissary and mobile food establishment, and to also update the guidance for those in Annex 2. So you'll see here on the screen, we did conceptually agree with these requests, and we did concur with including the updated guidelines developed through CFP into the code as well. We are, like Mary mentioned, conceptually agreeing with this. So what that means in this circumstance is that we are considering methods of referencing both a commissary and a mobile food establishment within the existing definitions or other methodologies for cross-referencing for food establishment, as we had indicated at council that those 2 subtypes would be considered food establishments. So just know there is an existing defined term, and we're working through the mechanics of what exactly the language for these 2 definitions needs to be and exactly where to place it in the code. But we will be moving forward with these 2 recommendations. Next slide. All right, next up is Council 1, issue 15. This one in particular asked if we could update the Institute for Food Technology, Technologists or IFT evaluation and definition of potentially hazardous foods report. For those of you that are familiar with this report, it was kind of a seminal report for retail in particular. It's a very long and exhaustive report, and it helped us move from potentially hazardous foods to time, temperature control for safety foods. So it's really been very helpful for the retail food safety community in moving our science forward and our risk-based inspection process forward. So we are concurring with researching pathways that we could provide a new edition of the IFT report. This one in particular, though, is going to be resource dependent. We are very supportive of an updated report, but we are working through some challenges. Many of you may already know that the IFT working groups were disbanded earlier in the year. But we are supportive of an update, and we're going to continue to pursue avenues that we might be able to make that work happen. Next slide. All right, next issue is issue 16. This one in particular was around the vending machine temperature control requirements that are in the code. For those of you familiar with the code, we do have Annex 3, which is our public health reasons. And there were some reasons given for the parameters around time and temperature control for vending machines in 4204-111 in Annex 3. But this one specifically requested that if we could clarify how those were selected, not just list the parameters there in the annex, but also talk a little bit about the science that we use to make those determinations. So we are committed to providing those additional materials in the annex. Next slide. All right, issue 18. This one in particular asked for us to amend the date marking exemption list to remove foods not subject to date marking. For those of you that are familiar with this provision, there are listed commodities specifically exempt from date marking, usually due to intrinsic values or due to other barriers that are put into place in the formulation of those food items. In particular, this one was around some of the shelf-stable, ready-to-eat meat and poultry products. So we are committed to continuing to work with USDA FSIS on how to best align the language and clarify this circumstance within the annex. We have found in our collaboration with USDA that there is a distinction between refrigeration after opening versus shelf stable if not open, and the science behind whether or not listeria is the concern for these items or not. And for those of you, we know that the date marking exemption really is our provision there for control of listeria since it grows at refrigerated temperature. So we're continuing to collaborate with USDA on that one. Next slide. All right, issue 120 that we concurred with is around manufacturer cooking instructions. This is a fairly new provision to the code, and we know that folks have been struggling with the implementation and adoption of this particular provision. So we are going to revisit this section. We've been asked specifically to look at the wording and see if we could simplify it or at least look to reduce confusion with some of the touch points it has across the code. So we will be looking at that and seeing if there are ways to simplify and streamline and better describe the science, the risks, and the ways to evaluate these particular commodities. Next slide, and I think I'm going to pass it over to Becky.
You are. Thank you, Jessica. So hello, everybody. Can you hear me all right? All right, same thing. If I start to break up, I'll more than happily turn off my camera. Okay, so this next issue is issue Council 121. This actually had multiple parts to the request. There were 3-part requests in total in this issue, 2 of which came to FDA. Of course, FDA fully supports that formation of the CFP donation committee or reformation of that committee to work on some additional requests from those charges, as well as we are partially concurring or conceptually agreeing with updating our Annex 2 related references for USDA FSS guidelines and the 2023 Food Donation Improvement Act. So we are supportive of that. Where FDA did not concur, so this is where the partially concur that Mary mentioned before, was in updating the proposed language in 8-101-10 regarding donation of economically adulterated foods. Just as a reminder, food code sections that end with .10 or .100 are non-debitable provisions in the food code. So this is already a non-debitable provision within the food code. So under this provision, food that is stored, prepared, packaged, displayed, or labeled according to law are already permissible to be donated as long as they're following all applicable local, state, federal statutes, regulations, and ordinances. So for that reason, FDA felt that this was not a good time to move to adding that economically adulterated, as it may conflict with some current provisions that are found in other statutes or regulations. Okay. And then next up, we had issue 123. So this covers our water reservoir clogging devices and cleaning. This was a request that we exempt those sealed expansion tanks or pressure vessels, as they're not an open reservoir, so they do not pose the same risk as a closed reservoir, a completely closed system from an approved water system. And in that, the only parts that would need to follow the cleaning procedures under the provision 20514 would be the nozzles and sprayers exposed to the environment. So we are looking at this provision as well as our Annex 3 language to see if there is the possibility to update and clarify what is what we intend as a reservoir versus these closed sealed systems, in which Legionella is not as high of a risk concern as an open reservoir. Okay, then next up, we again had another request for one of those non-debitable provisions in the food code. This is under 420510 for equipment certification and classification. So this is our reference to ANSI standards. We recognize that ANSI Standard 2 has recently incorporated Standard 36 and updated some definitions and language. And because of that, this might be a chance to then update our acceptability provision by including tableware and multi-use utensils. So we are working with NSF with this provision to make sure that we're aligning their standard language with our food code language, just to make sure it incorporates. So we're going to continue working with NSF, and we concur to look at updating that provision. And I think I'm going to turn it back over to Jessica.
Awesome. And was it my audio that was going, or did Becky's go a little at the end? It's touchy, man. It's touchy.
Yeah,
Okay.
her last sentence. I don't know what happened.
Okay, tell me if it goes garbly. Okay, we're going to keep plowing through because there's lots of things we concurred with, and I know you're interested to see what's coming. So the next up is issue 2025-125. This one in particular asked us to clarify whether consumer advisory for raw animal foods is only applicable to foods under immediate service. This type of issue has been submitted at least 2 previous times to CFP, but didn't make it all the way through the council proceedings. So this time it's here. So we do concur with updating Annex 3 for 3-603-11 to specifically answer this particular question and include information about whether or not a food could, I guess the best way to describe it, be partially cooked. And then cooled, held, and served at a later time under a consumer advisory. So be on the lookout for those updates. Next slide. All right, the next up is 128. I'm sure most on this call are very familiar with this. I see some familiar faces on here. Some of you were even on Council 1B numerous times. This has been debated. So this was issue 128. And it's around the allowance of a loose-fitting glove as a utensil. We did conceptually agree with the recommendation that updates be made to the food code regarding the use of loose-fitting gloves, particularly as a utensil, in a manner where the glove could be removed in a contamination-free process. And if that were possible, then it wouldn't require a hand wash between the changes of that loose fitting over glove. So we are working on that language and incorporating it into the code. Next slide, 129. We did get a request for glove use to align some of the language and expand the descriptive text for the item number on the inspection form. specifically for item number 15, which currently is food separated and protected. It's an overarching item number where we do our evaluation of observed contamination in the establishment. This particular request was for single-use cloth and slash-resistant gloves to be added to that item title on the inspection form and marking instructions. And this particular one, we only partially concurred with. So we did concur with adding slash-resistant and cloth to the inspection report for item number, I think that's later on in the description, number 46, because that one in particular does speak to the use of gloves. But we did not concur with adding single-use gloves used properly to food separated protected for item 15, because we didn't want folks to interpret that item 15 was only for evaluating glove use when you're doing your overarching evaluation of food being separated and protected and preventing that observed contamination. So we did partially concur with this one. You'll be seeing some changes to item number 46, but we did not concur with the ask to change item number 15. Next up is issue 130. This one is particularly about section 230311, and that's our jewelry prohibition. We did concur with amending 230311 to include an exemption for the use of medical monitoring devices. This is actually a great time for us to have the ability to revisit the reasonable accommodations that could be provided and made available to food employees upon request, especially if that medical device can be kept clean or prevent potential contamination. So as we work through and work on exactly how to put this language together, we are going to look at those reasonable accommodations with the Americans of Disabilities Act and really look into the who's and what's and allowances within that as to how we can provide a good intersection between food safety and reasonable accommodation. Next slide. This one we're actually very excited about. Issue 131 asked us to amend the food code to clarify that the employee illness policy should be written. It was always the intent that we should have written policies, but we know that timing is everything. And it seems like the food safety community really is in a place now where we can all support the role that having written policies plays in the ability of a facility to really sustainably comply over time. So we're very excited about this one. We did concur with this. We are working on language. And we're really hoping that when you see the proposed changes to subpart 2201, that you're pleasantly surprised, and it makes it a little bit easier for both regulators to evaluate and industry partners to set up their policies so that they're clear and again, can be sustainably applied over time. Next slide. Issue 132. This one asked us to align the Annex 7 marking guide with the FDA Procedures Manual for Standardization. You guys know we have a lot of documents all over the internet that have all the different ways we should be looking at how we're conducting our risk-based inspections and ways to look at the items during inspection and evaluation. And in this particular circumstance, we got some really valuable feedback regarding a misalignment between the Procedures Manual for Standardization and the marking instructions in the food code. So we will be making some changes to make it really clear that there is a NA or not applicable option for item number 30 under your good retail practices. And we'll be making sure to describe that fully in Annex 7, the marking food establishment inspection report. And I think I'm going to pass it back to Becky again. If her audio is working.
All right. There. Does it work? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Perfect. All right. So next up, we have another one that had a couple of asks for it. Again, in issue 133, there was a request to kind of move language in Annex 3 that discussed canned foods that are heated for hot holding to the appropriate section that addresses commercially processed food that are reheated for hot holding, because that was somewhat confusing to include it under the plant food cooking provision in the Annex 3. So we partially concur with this request in that, yes, let's move that and make it correct and easily understandable. Where FDA is not concurring at this time is with amending the food code to include the term fungi in those sections of plant food cooking for hot holding. Many of the reasons, of course, and we'll get to this in a little bit, but there is a committee that's working on mushroom cooking parameters right now. So we do want to see how that kind of aligns and comes out from that committee. Plus, fungi encompasses a huge kingdom of living things, and it's not just necessarily plants. It kind of goes over a couple of different phylums within our plant world and fungi world. So with that, we think it's a little bit premature to add it to this provision. We really want to, see where that CFP committee is going to take us while they're looking at the science and evaluation of cooking temperatures of specialty mushrooms. And then next up, and these are the last two for Council 1, we have combined them into one again, mostly because they kind of went in the same pathway, although they did discuss a couple of different things. We concur that proper disposal of personal care items is a very important process. So that absolutely we are going to look at how to clarify that language within the food code that personal care items need to be properly disposed of and protected in a sanitary manner in restroom facilities. We are not concurring with necessarily addressing these two separate ways. So we really think that we can combine them and look at something that will help us address them as one cohort. So we're moving forward with looking at that language. Okay, so that is it for our Council 1 issues, and Jessica did a great job as our Council 1 consultant on that committee, and we really appreciate it because, as you can see, we got a lot of concur and partially concur out of that. So that's awesome. Okay, so now we're on to Council 2. This is where many of our standing committees for CFP report back to a lot of the training certification, body of work, and of course, most importantly, our retail program standards work comes out of Council 2, which is what a large number of the recommendations that came to FDA revolved around. 6 of the 7 recommendations from Council 2 actually revolve around program standards. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our champion of program standards, Carolyn White from our implementation team, who is our consultant for program standards.
Thanks so much, Becky. Great to see everyone this afternoon. So we have 3 issues that we're going to discuss related specifically to retail program standards. The first is Council 2, issue 17. And this issue had asked us to add some auditor qualifications into the administrative procedures. And what the recommendation here is adding that qualification of attending a SAVA workshop. I've seen many of you in that self-assessment verification audit workshop. Discussion at the table is really around ensuring that auditors are familiar with the standards. It helps make that process go smoother for both the self-assessing and the verification auditing jurisdiction. So we conceptually agree. I will note on this slide and the following slide, we do have that cute little caveat. The implementation of some of these things may be delayed based on resources as things have been changing throughout recent months. So next up, we have Council 2, issue 18, which is asking us to amend Standard 2 to reflect this competency-based approach. I know many of you all have seen the National Curriculum Standard Framework. I've seen those delightful graphics with all the courses of starting out basic from retail inspector, we got a manufacturing track, all of that good thing. And there's been a lot of good buzz around the regulatory and laboratory training system. So what issue 18 was asking us to do is really revise and revamp part of Standard 2 to show a competency-based approach in line with two of the RLTS and the NCS framework. Again, implementation will likely be delayed. The RLTS is being stood up. That is being worked on as we speak. So stay tuned. Some exciting things to come as things get put together. And then finally, the third issue that we have, program standards related, issue 19 out of Council 2 was incorporating some very specific definitions. We wanted to include risk-based inspection and intervention strategy, some terms you've probably heard across multiple areas of retail food. So FDA had crafted these set definitions. We've socialized them in other areas. You'll see these in the standardization manual. And we're going to formalize those within the retail program standards manual as well. Kind of those basics. That risk-based inspection is that retail food establishment inspection that prioritizes the identification and correction of risk factors that contribute to foodborne illness. And then we added intervention strategy, those food protection activities, initiatives, or tools implemented to achieve immediate and or long-term control of those foodborne illness risk factors. So you will see those added in the 26 manual. And Becky, I'm going to toss it back to you.
Great. Thank you, Carolyn. Exciting stuff coming. All right. So our last one for Council 2 was an issue recommendation to update the Annex 3 cross-contact description under 460211, food contact or equipment, food contact surfaces and utensils. So yes, we agree in concept with the intent of the recommendation. Some of the proposed wording may not be exactly the same, as this was a concur, conceptually agree. Right now, it looks like we are considering possibly the use of the FSMA, the Food Safety Modernization Act description for allergen cross contact. So we're going to continue to work with that, and I know that was also important committee work as well. Okay, so on to our last council, Council 3. This is the council that deals primarily with those science and technology related requests, some food code changes and other actions. So issue Council 3, number 9. This was to add some updated food code language regarding rehydration of dehydrated foods to have to follow the manufacturer instructions. So think things like hash browns that come in dehydrated in a box that you add the warm water to rehydrate and then cook. And there are instructions, manufacturer instructions on those boxes. So the request was to update the food code to make a requirement to follow those instructions. We conceptually agree with this recommendation. We're still considering the strategies on how and where to add these provisions so that it will fit with our standard food code convention. So this may also have some tentacles that we'll get into our TCS strategy that we're going to talk about in a little bit as well. Issue 13, this was to amend the temperature requirements for sanitizers in 4501114. So those EPA registered sanitizers that don't fall under our big categories of chlorine, iodine, or quaternary ammonia, there was a request to, well, what temperature do we have to use these at if it's not on the label? So we have consulted with EPA on this, and it does look like we can go forward with putting some language into the food code that would address what temperature to use if it's not otherwise stated on the label. Of course, if it's on the label, you follow the EPA registered label. Issue 27 in Council 3. This was to update the Annex 3 language for time as a public health control. So a lot of that language for time as a public health control was from originally when time as a public health control was put into the code. So late 90s, early 2000s. Dr. Don Schaffner had written a position paper and provided us some feedback on updates that have happened in a lot of the pathogen modeling programs that really spoke to the need to update our annex language so that we have the best science going forward. We concur with that, and we've been working with Dr. Schaffner to get that language updated. We may see this happen in sequence. Again, we may move to some language now, and then as we work through our TCS strategy, we may further update it in upcoming supplements in addition to the food code. But yes, we agree that it's time to look at that and get the most current pathogen modeling programs and science in that. Okay, mushroom cooking temperature. This is the issue 328. Again, this is a kind of a two-part. One, it asked for us to participate in the CFP Mushroom Cooking Committee. We are actively participating in that committee. They had just had a meeting yesterday. So we are working with them. We plan to provide, as much consultation as we possibly can to move forward with that issue. It also asked to address the hazards of raw specialty mushrooms in Annex 3 under the cooking provision. We concur with doing that, although that, again, may take some time because we do want to see where that committee comes out at and make sure that we don't get ahead of what the committee is working on. So this may be something that once the committee gets going and decides where their footing is, then we may work on our language to kind of coincide. Okay, and then issue 26. This addresses the kind of new technologies that we're seeing a lot of. Dehydration, maybe not necessarily new, but freeze drying methods for preservation definitely has something that we've seen more on. There was a request to add some language both in Annex 3 and Annex 6. So we partially concur with this. We do agree with the concept of moving forward with some Annex 6 language on both the processes and for dehydration and freeze drying methods. So we're working with SMEs and others to help us formulate those to address process hazards and controls. Where we're not ready yet is that Annex 3 public health reasons. We're looking at that as part of our TCS strategy. So that may be, again, something that will go forward. As you can see, that science and technology and a lot of these Council 3 issues kind of all lead into the same kind of parameters that fall under TCS. Okay. And then lastly for me, I think, is issues 29 and 30. Again, these two are combined because they kind of were two-part of the same types of recommendations, in that issue 29 asked for there to be some updates in how to cool and using shallow pan cooling, and then under cooling methods to then describe what that shallow pan cooking would look like. So we conceptually agree. So language may not look exactly like came out of the council recommendations, but we do agree with looking at how to incorporate some information and alternatives for shallow pan cooking in both cooling parameters and cooling method parameters. Okay, and I think now I'll turn it back over to Mary.
Hi. Okay, so this slide really talks about where we need further discussion and perhaps consultation with the CFP Executive Board prior to us deciding on whether a modification of the food code is warranted, as it was recommended in the letter. So for just a little bit of background, the time temperature control for safety food, or TCS, was previously known as potentially hazardous foods, or PHF. And they're foods that require time and temperature control for safety to limit that pathogenic microorganism growth or toxin formation. Back in the days in 2000, at the CFP meeting, we had a potentially hazardous foods definition committee. And that was formed. And during the 2002 CFP committee meeting, there was an issue that called for the CFP PHF definition committee to address the IFT report that Jessica had spoke to earlier. And it called for the use of the term TCS rather than continuing with the term PHF. So in 2004, at that CFP meeting, FDA asked for a new definition and for the inclusion of the interaction tables to be included in the food code, along with the information from the IFT December report. And it was actually all of that passed and was included in the 2005 code, not specifically just as TCS, but as a joint term, PHF/TCS, to allow for time for that term of TCS to be more widely used and accepted. And as we know, the TCS definition has continued to evolve to its present form in the 2022 Food Code. Over the last 25 years, there have been multiple issue submissions regarding modifications or addition to either the TCS definition or how to evaluate a TCS food. So based on the listed issues that were submitted during this past biennium, we really acknowledge that now is the time to further clarify and define TCS foods and its application in the field. So we've decided to revisit the definition of TCS foods, and we recognize that proper handling of TCS foods is a key focus area for our food safety inspections and training programs, and therefore the definition and the application must be easily understood by the retail food operators and inspectors in the field. Next slide. And so we are initiating a comprehensive review of the TCS food definition in the food code, and we are going to be seeking early industry, regulatory, and academic input to inform our approach. And this is going to be preliminary consultation at this early stage, and other opportunities for input are going to follow. This effort is going to reflect a holistic approach that will consider current foodborne pathogen research, advances in innovation and technology, and evolving trends in product development and retail practices, all through the lens of food safety risk. And so as part of this approach, the agency will engage internally and externally with our stakeholders, including partners from regulatory bodies such as you, academia, industry, and experts across the agency. And when resources permit, we will convene food safety and policy experts from these groups. So as we engage with all of you and all the stakeholders that I've mentioned, we're really interested in understanding what are the stakeholder challenges with regard to the TCS definition? What are ideas on how we could move forward in revisiting this TCS definitions? What are your priorities in revisiting the definition? And what are those important outcomes that you want to see? Do you have specific data sources or studies that you know of, or maybe that industry and academia and regulatory scientists experts have done that we can engage with? And any timeline considerations that we should be aware of for any potential changes. These are things that will be coming out, of the strategy, and that might come across your table to hone in on and provide some feedback for FDA. So that's a little bit on the TCS strategy. More to come on that, because that is definitely a big project that Glenda Lewis is undertaking. And with that, I think it's our last slide, and it's for any questions that you may have.
If you have any questions, you can raise your hand, or you can put your question in the chat. Either one. We'll give you a few minutes to gather your thoughts and see what more you would like to hear.
Usually this is not a shy group.
All right, Matthew, please go ahead.
Yeah, I understand the FDA had done some time to look at the way the food code written that has led to some trouble, some fun when you guys have to do updates with the stuff that led to, I believe, like the updated one version of the 2022 food code. Do you anticipate with those changes that incorporating these changes and getting that final version that's ready to go out is going to be a lot smoother for you guys? I mean, is that that's probably the end goal, but do you anticipate based off of some of those tests that that will in fact be the case for you guys?
Let me start this one off, and then Jessica, Becky, you could chime in. You know, we actually have worked, and Becky could speak to this the best. We have actually reformatted, redone the code to allow for us to really understand the structure, because what in 2022 we really tried to move towards a what's the word? An indexing that can Becky, what's the word for it?
A little bit more automated hyperlink kind of.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hyperlinked, automated. And it really took us some time to do that back coding and stuff to get it to the format that we're at. We think we're in a better place now moving forward to be able to incorporate all these changes in and move forward with the new way of indexing. As you know, dealing with Word is really difficult. And when you have a Word document that's over 800 pages, it's even more difficult. So thank you for your patience. And we definitely, as Chris had indicated in the beginning, we're targeting a release in July, which is earlier than we've released in a few years. So we hope it'll work. Fingers crossed. And Becky, if you wanted to add, because she is the master of Word documents right now.
A skill set I didn't know I was gonna, I had or was gonna do while I got here. But I will say in this, I guess you can call it off season while we're working on language, we are making many of the fixes and formatting and other things. And like Mary said, learning how to do it so that we're all ready. So our base already has the supplement added in it, and we're now continuing on with that, and I think that is going to make things go a little bit smoother because the supplement, knock on wood, went pretty smooth putting it in. So hopefully as we get the language moved in for these issues that we just covered today, it'll continue to go smooth. So hopefully.
Okay, thank you. We have a question in the chat regarding shallow pan cooling. Is the FDA's opinion that no monitoring of the cooling temperature is necessary?
You want me to take that one, Mary?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Jessica, and then I'll fill in if I need to.
So for those of you who have been involved in CFP, you know that this issue has come through council more than once. And that is the major concern is how is this, if added to the code, going to look for compliance and enforcement, and what makes the most sense. Certainly as we work through the language, we are going to look at what those critical points are that we do need to have monitoring, and we'll right size it. I don't know that I can directly answer your question ahead of the language that's going to go into the code, but certainly we are well aware of the intricacies of cooling, what we typically would require, what's implied to be required, and what are the best ways to control the risks that come along with cooling. So more on that soon.
Great, thank you. Any other questions out there that you would like to ask our expert panel here while we have them on the call? All right, so we do have another question. Do you anticipate that the TCS strategy results will be included in the 2026 food code?
I'll take that one. as you had seen, there's a lot of work that's going to go into the strategy, and we are kind of like in the beginning stages. We're actually developing a charter right now, and that's going to dictate like all of these engagements and everything that's going to be moving forward. If there are things that we could definitely move in 2026 to submit an issue to CFP, we definitely will go there. But we want to make sure that what we do is right, the science is right. And so if it lends for us to be able to submit an issue to CFP for a change, we certainly will. I hope that answers your question.
All right, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Jason, did that answer your question? Yes, he says it did. Thank you.
These are great questions. It proves we did not put anyone to sleep. So you're all acutely aware of what's going on right now. And so are we. I'm glad that these are such fantastic questions.
All right, any additional questions? Now is your chance, or we will have to wait until we have a newer food code version to dialogue with our FDA partners here. So,
and Deanna, can I add one more thing?
Absolutely.
If we are not closed for the long term at the federal level, we are planning a 50-state call that is going to be held on October 21st. I think we did message out that invite through our retail listserv. So be on the lookout for that. But I will warn you that if we are closed for an extended time, that call will be canceled and we'll have to reschedule, of course, for when we return. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that. So there'll be other opportunities for engagement with regard to our efforts to communicate the FDA response letter.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that update. Right, before we say thank you to our FDA partners, is there anything else that you guys would like to add today?
I just wanted to thank you again for the invitation to this call. We really enjoyed being here. And to everyone, please do not hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. If you think of something later, we're here. Well, we're going to try to be here if we possibly can. And yeah, we're here for you. So do not hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you again.
All right, thank you so much for your partnership and being forthcoming with all this information. We all had questions, and your input is so very valuable to my state managers on the call. I just wanted to let you know that there will be an evaluation to come following this call, as well as the link to the recording for today. And we have our upcoming dates set for December 9th and March 3rd. So we will likely be doing some open Q&A and roundtable discussions in some future calls. If there's any topics you would like to hear about, please let me know in those evaluations. And I appreciate your participation today and your time. Thank you. Have a great day.